this year, I went on a trip to Japan and I challenged myself to bring only my iPhone. No professional cameras, no gimbals, nothing else. The challenge was simple. Could I make a cinematic travel video with just an iPhone? And the answer was 100% yes. I was very impressed by the capabilities of the iPhone. And the main reason I decided to bring only the iPhone was because it was more of a family holiday trip. I still wanted to make a video about the trip, but didn't want to lug around big camera bags with professional cameras and take away from the actual holiday itself. So with the new capabilities and features on the new iPhones, I thought taking my iPhone 16 Pro that I had just bought at the time was the best choice for this trip. Since then, I've been using it for so many projects, and in this video, I'll break down exactly how I shoot, the gear I use, and how I color grade the footage to make it look cinematic. So first of all, my gear and phone setups. I have two main setups. The first setup is my cinematic setup, where I use a free well case that enables me to magnetically attach a variable ND plus polarizer filter, which allows me to shoot with manual settings inside of the iPhone to lock my shutter speed and get natural motion blur and correct the exposure with the ND filter. I've tried many filter and case setups over the past year with the iPhone, and the freewell case and variable ND plus polarizer filter is by far the best setup I have used with the iPhone. So if you're interested in seriously leveling up your iPhone shots and want to get this ND filter set up for your phone, I have a special affiliate link in the description below where you can pick yourself up one of these freewell cases and variable ND polarizer filters. With this setup, I also use a newer phone mount, which allows me to attach my phone onto any tripod with the base plate, and it also has a 1/4 inch screw slot on the bottom where I can use different attachments like this small rig magic arm to get super creative shots that I'll talk more about later in this video. The next setup I use is my more simple run and gun setup, where I use a quad lock case, and the quad lock case allows me to attach my phone onto my motorcycle inside of my car, and also to use this special quad lock selfie stick / tripod, which packs away really nicely into my bag and is really good when I'm going out for rides or just quick trips where I don't want to bring my full professional camera setup but still get super high quality footage out of the phone. With this setup, I can't use ND filters and use manual settings, but that's okay. The auto settings coming out of the iPhone look amazing, and that is the point of my iPhone setup. I want it to stay as much as an iPhone setup as possible. I don't want to rig it out with handles, all this crazy stuff. I want to keep it as simple and as iPhone as possible. What app do I use to film on the iPhone? I don't use the native camera app. I actually use the free Blackmagic camera app, and this app unlocks pro camera settings within the iPhone and different video codecs as well that you can't get in the native camera app. It allows you to adjust manual settings like shutter speed, ISO, and a bunch of other pro tools. So let's just jump into the Blackmagic camera app and I'll show you exactly what settings I use, and then we'll go from there. First of all, we'll jump into the settings here and I'll show you the best settings that I use. Here in the codec, this is where the normal camera app doesn't allow you to choose different codecs. So I use Apple ProRes 422 LT, which is more of a middle ground of Apple ProRes. If you were to choose Apple ProRes 422 HQ, your storage in your phone and also even your computer will fill up very quickly. So I use kind of an in-between, which is Apple ProRes 422 LT. And even if the LT version is racking up too much storage, I would recommend using the H.265 option with the max bitrate. You honestly won't really be able to tell much of a difference, but I like to choose Apple ProRes as it's more efficient editing in my computer and better for color grading. Resolution, of course, 4K. Next, for color space, we're going to change from Rec 709 to Apple Log HDR, and this is the main thing that makes shooting on iPhone so powerful, that it has its own real log color profile that's shooting in 10-bit. You'll notice when shooting in log, the footage straight out of the camera looks super dull, washed out, and no contrast at all, but that log profile is what gives you the flexibility to further color grade your footage in post and get a better cinematic look. And we'll be getting more into that later on in the video. Next, I have enable vertical video mode turned on, because if I want to be able to shoot a vertical video for stories, I can, and it won't be locked in the horizontal mode. So with that enabled, you're able to switch between horizontal and vertical. Then you want to make sure you have lock white balance on record enabled, and that's if I'm using an auto white balance, but usually I have my white balance set manually. Shutter measurement, I have this set to speed. You can use angle and just set it to 180-degree shutter angle, but when I'm not using manual settings within the Blackmagic camera app, I like to just be able to see what shutter speed I'm shooting at instead of trying to figure out the calculation of the shutter angle. Next, for audio, if you're using the actual iPhone for your audio, in the iPhone microphone option, just just select auto, and while you're out filming, the iPhone will choose which microphone that best suits the situation and where the audio is coming from. But if you are using a physical ND filter on your phone, you want to make sure to select bottom, because if you're on auto and using a physical ND filter, there is actually a microphone right here where the cameras are, and sometimes the auto option can start using this microphone that is underneath the ND filter, and the audio will sound really muffled. So if you are using an ND filter like I usually do, you want to select bottom so it uses the bottom microphone only and doesn't automatically go up to the microphone that will be behind the ND filter and ruin your audio. But if you're not using a physical ND filter, just leave that on auto. This is my favorite feature about the Blackmagic camera app, and that is the LUTs feature. You are able to install log LUTs directly into the Blackmagic camera app to preview how your look is going to look while you're out filming. So in the iPhone edition of my LUT packs, it comes with LUTs specifically designed to be used within the Blackmagic camera app. Trying to expose looking directly through the dull, washed out log footage is very hard. So importing these log monitoring LUTs is really important to correctly expose your footage and also just get inspiration while you're out shooting. Now remember, these LUTs are to just monitor what the footage is going to look like while you're out filming to get correct exposure, and then when you import it into your editing software, it will still be the log color profile that you need to then color grade. However, within the Blackmagic camera app, there is an option to record LUT to clip. So basically baking that LUT into the clip you're filming so you don't need to do any color grading later on. And I use this when filming things like stories or videos I want to get out straight away. I just select record LUT to clip, choose which LUT I want to use, which suits the scene the best, film it, upload it to Instagram stories without having to do any adjustments, and it looks super cinematic already thanks to using the baked in LUT. If you're interested in using the LUTs I specifically designed for the Blackmagic camera app, you can find my LUTs linked below in the video description. And those are all the internal settings I use within the Blackmagic camera app. Now for my manual settings when shooting with an ND filter. First of all, I shoot at either 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, or 120 frames per second is actually possible within the iPhone, which is so sick. Now, depending on what frame rate you're shooting at, for your shutter speed, you want to double it for your frame rate. So if I'm shooting at 30 frames, for example, I will then lock my shutter speed at 1/60. And that is following the 180-degree shutter rule. So I'll lock in my shutter speed at 1/60. And then for ISO, you just want to keep it as low as physically possible. I went on a research obsession trying to figure out what the dual native base ISO for the iPhones was. Like for my Sony a7 IV in S-Log3, the base ISO is 800 and the dual native base ISO is 3200. I tried to figure out exactly what those values were within the iPhone for Apple Log, and basically the base ISO option is the lowest ISO option, and the dual native base ISO option on the 24mm lens is 1250. So there are different base ISOs for each different lens option. As you know, the iPhone has 3 different lenses. So at that point I was like, I just want the iPhone to be a simple setup physically and internally within the settings. I don't want to get too technical with any of that stuff. So yes, shooting at the correct base ISO for your log profile will get you better dynamic range, but I'm shooting on an iPhone and I want to keep it that way. I want to keep it as simple as possible. So depending on the lighting situation, I keep my ISO for all 3 lenses just as low as possible. Then for white balance, depending on the lighting situation outside, I'll honestly just select one of these presets. So if it's sunny, I'll select the sun preset and lock that in, and my white balance is good to go. And if it isn't perfect, I can easily make those changes later in editing because I'm shooting in Apple Log, which we will be getting into the color grading process later in this video. Those are my manual settings when using my cinematic setup with the iPhone using ND filters. But sometimes I just have my phone with me with the simple quad lock case setup and I don't have my ND filters. That's where I just have the iPhone set to complete auto settings. I'm still using the Blackmagic camera app, I'm still shooting in Apple Log, but everything else is set to auto, like auto shutter speed, auto ISO, and auto white balance, where the white balance locks onto whatever the white balance is once I hit record. In this way, I'm able to use the iPhone like an iPhone with no other other accessories, but still get super high quality footage and advanced capabilities to color grade that log color profile later in editing. Then you want to click this little option down here and make sure you have rule of thirds grid enabled so you can better compose your shots, and also turn on the level so you can make sure your shots are level. Then the LUT option right here is how you can choose which LUT you are previewing, or if you have record LUT to clip enabled, which LUT you are baking into your footage. And I just have all my iPhone monitoring LUTs installed into the Blackmagic camera app from my V2 LUT pack iPhone edition. Next to that, we have the stabilization options, which is really cool. You can choose to turn stabilization completely off, and that is so cool and useful for so many ideas I've had to shoot with the iPhone. And of course, you can choose from these other stabilization options if you want to have stabilization turned on. I'm usually choosing standard or turning it completely off. And then we have our lens options. And of course, you know the Pro versions of the iPhone have 3 different lenses, and in the Blackmagic camera app, you have the option to choose between these lenses. We have a 13mm, a 24mm, a 48mm, which is, I believe, just a cropped in version of the 24mm lens, and then a 120mm lens as well. And as I mentioned before, all of these different lenses use different sensors which have different base ISOs. So that's why I just didn't care about the base ISO options and the dynamic range at that point. Apolog is powerful and good enough, so I just, yeah, have it at that. And I think the 13mm lens, the super wide lens, is my favorite lens to use because it has a really close focal distance, allowing you to get the camera really close to objects and still having it in focus. And I've had lots of fun using this feature to get super creative shots, getting really close to my computer screen to get super dynamic, quick cut behind the scenes, editing looking shots, mounting my phone to the small rig Magic Arm setup and getting it really close to logos or different camera setups I have going to get behind the scenes shots. And it's just super cool and pretty much nearly impossible to do with a normal professional camera like my Sony a7 IV because of how heavy it is, and I would need to attach some sort of macro lens or a macro adapter, whereas the iPhone has a super wide, super close focal distance lens right on it inside of this tiny form factor that I can mount pretty much anywhere to get those super creative close-up locked-on shots. And actually that reminds me, when I'm getting any of those close-up locked-on shots, I have stabilization turned off. So you don't get that stabilization wobbly look, you just have stabilization turned off and it'll be locked on to whatever you have the frame set on. I briefly mentioned frame rates earlier on in the video, but I want to talk about one of my favorite features in the iPhone, which is 120 frames per second. Now it only allows you to shoot 120 frames per second in the main 24mm camera, but this little iPhone shooting 4K 120 frames per second 10-bit Apolog HDR in Apple ProRes 422 is just crazy. I had so much fun in Japan playing around shooting at 120 frames per second. The footage comes out so nice, and you're able to slow the footage down to 25% in a 30 frames per second timeline. And in the other two lenses, you're able to shoot up to 60 frames per second, which is still pretty good slow motion, being able to slow down to 50% in a 30 frames per second timeline. Now the phone setup and phone settings is only half of the process. We're gonna jump into DaVinci Resolve now, and I'm gonna show you the exact steps I take to bring the log footage out of the iPhone and transforming it to looking beautiful and cinematic with my LUTs and CineKit Power Grade for DaVinci Resolve. So let's jump into it. We now have DaVinci Resolve open and I have a few iPhone clips loaded in here to grade. Now first, I'm going to show you how powerful my iPhone log combination LUTs are to color grade your footage in pretty much one click. So let's open up the color page tab in DaVinci Resolve, and for this first clip here, we're going to find LUTs, open that up, go to the JV2 LUT pack, we'll open up the iPhone log LUTs and select combination LUTs. The monitoring LUTs inside of the iPhone edition are to be loaded into the Blackmagic camera app, where the combination LUTs are to be used in an actual editing software to color grade later. So open up the combination LUTs. I'm editing on a MacBook Pro, so we're going to select Mac, and let's just select a LUT here. We'll go with Serene, and bam, that is graded. That before and after looks so good. We can scroll through a couple of these to see the different looks we can achieve with the different LUTs. That is looking really sick. We'll jump over to the next clip here and select another LUT. Actually, let's go with Serene. Yeah, that looks sick as well. We'll jump to the next clip and let's go with Horizon. That looks insane. Even night footage coming out of the iPhone looks sick shooting in Apolog. Oh yeah, that looks really nice. I'm happy with that one. Next clip, let's go with Horizon. Actually, let's go Serene. Yeah, that fits the vibe a bit more. Next clip, this is the same location, so we'll go with serene as well. Literally one click and that iPhone log footage is looking sick. At the Supercross in Utah, let's go with Echo. Look at that, one click, and we're taking it from log to Rec 709 with a creative look in one with that combination LUT. And look at that, all these 6 shots graded very simply, quickly and easily using my log combination LUTs for the iPhone. However, that is the fast and efficient way to grade this iPhone log footage. But now I'm going to show you how I take this iPhone log footage even further and grade it with my CineKit DaVinci Resolve Power Grade. So for this first clip here, let's erase that node and we'll go up here to the gallery and I'll drop on my CineKit Power Grade right there. This Power Grade is working inside of a DaVinci wide gamut color space. So we have a CST in and a CST out here. I'm not going to go too in depth into all these details in this tutorial. My CineKit and LUT packs come with really in detail tutorials on all of this color grading and DaVinci wide gamut information, everything like that. In the CST in, these are the CST settings you want to use for Apple log footage. The input color space, we're going to change to Rec 2020, and the input gamma, we're going to change to Apple log. And as you can see, that transforms our log footage to Rec 709. Then I'm going to jump into the exposure node and adjust my gain. I'm going to lift it up a little bit and also drop the gamma for a bit of natural contrast there. That looks clean. Looking at the vector scope, the white balance actually looks perfect, so I'm going to leave that as it is. We'll add a bit of HSV saturation to make that red pop there. We'll enable the look compound node and open this up, and in the 709 LUT 1, we're going to go find my JV2 LUT pack, open the Rec 709 creative LUTs because this footage has been transformed to Rec 709, so we need to use a Rec 709 LUT, not to the combination LUT. Then for this clip, I'm going to select Summit, we'll go to the keyer, and we'll turn that key output gain to about 0.6. And that looks fire right there. That's before and after the LUT applied. Looking so sick. We'll go out of the look compound node and I'm going to enable some effects that I have built into this CineKit Power Grade. We're going to enable halation, bloom, keep the radial blur enabled, and also the RGB split adds a nice little RGB split to all the edges here and looks super sick. And that's before and after the effects. And honestly, for this clip, I am going to enable a bit of grain. And I'm very happy with that grade. That is looking sick. The next backflip shot in the snow, again, we'll drag on the CineKit and input our CST settings here. Now the white balance on this one looks a little off to me, so I'm going to open up my linear white balance node and go to my gain wheel and kind of bring that somewhere I think looks better. Yeah, that looks so much better. We took all of those reds out of the whites. Just looks a lot cleaner now. Exposure honestly looks pretty good. I'm going to lift up the gain a little bit. Then we'll open up our look node again and apply another Rec 709 creative LUT. I'm going to go with serene and we'll turn that output down to about 50%. Yeah, I'm happy with that. We'll go out of the look node and enable some effects. Let's turn off vignette and keep bloom, halation, radial blur, and the RGB split enabled. That before and after of the effects looks really good. And honestly, that is that grade done. Looking so sick. Okay, let's have a little bit of fun with this night shot. Again, throwing on the CineKit, applying our CST settings, and we'll just check our white balance. It looks a little bit off. Let's fix that slightly there. Yep, much cleaner now. In our exposure, I'm gonna bring the gamma down a little bit and also lift up the gain. Again, for that natural kind of contrast. Using exposure tools, I can add some more contrast using this contrast node, but for this clip, I think we don't need it. I will bump up the saturation with the HSV saturation and lift up the gain to boost that saturation a little bit more as well. Very subtle, but that's clean. Again, enabling and opening up the look node, and we'll find another clean Rec 709 LUT. Let's go with Viridial. Yeah, that looks so sick. Sheesh, that looks so cool. Let's open up the effects. And again, we'll probably have halation, bloom. Let's enable the vignette for this one. Radial and RGB split enabled for the effects. And let's soften the image a little bit as well. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. We also have a masks compound node where you can add some masks if needed, but it's not needed for this shot. That is beautiful. I'm really happy with that clip as well. Okay, let's skip these two clips. They look pretty good just using the combination LUTs, and we will go to our last Supercross clip here. Let's delete that node and throw on the Cine kit again. Now let me demonstrate to you how you can still use the combination LUTs with the Cine kit. So for our CST in, we're gonna leave it as Rec. 709A as the input, and in our look compound node, we're gonna open that up and disable the 709 LUT and select combination LUT, enable that, and go back to our iPhone log LUTs, combination LUTs, Mac, and just select one of these. Let's go with Horizon, and bam, that is transforming our footage from log into Rec. 709 and applying the creative look in one. That's why inside of this look compound node, I have these options to apply a combination LUT or just a 709 LUT on its own. And as you can see, these LUTs are in a parallel node because you can actually combine LUTs to create an even cooler, unique look. But I'm happy with how this is looking for this grade. So we'll jump out of the look node now, and we'll turn down the highlights a little bit and also lift up the gamma to balance out this shot a bit. Let's enable HSV saturation, but turn it down ever so slightly so it's not too powerful. And we'll jump into the effects again. I'm not gonna enable halation. I am gonna enable bloom. We'll turn off vignette, turn off radial blur, and keep RGB split. That's looking really nice, adds a subtle effect to that. I think I wanna cool the shot off a little bit, so we'll go into the temp node here. This isn't a white balance fix or adjustment. This is more of a creative adjustment with the temp node here. So we'll go to our temp sliders here, and we'll just go -50. That's a little too much. We'll go -30 to cool off this image ever so slightly, and that is looking really nice. I'm happy with that. And that's it. That is how I color grade my iPhone log footage to make it look as cinematic as possible using my log LUTs and or CineKit Power Grade for DaVinci Resolve. As I mentioned earlier, the CineKit and LUT packs come with more in-depth tutorials into my color grading process. So if you do pick up any of the kits, you will have those to watch and learn from as well. I have one more bonus tip for the iPhone that is really cool, and that is the slow shutter effect that you can do in more professional cameras like my A7 IV here. The slow shutter effect is basically turning your shutter speed down past the frame rate. So for example, I'm shooting at 30 frames per second. I'm gonna turn my shutter speed all the way down to, let's say, 1/110th of a second, and you'll get that stuttery motion blur slow shutter effect. Now you can't do this in the free Blackmagic camera app yet, but hopefully eventually they bring that update out. But you can do it in the Moment camera app. Now the Moment camera app is free, but the slow shutter effect is an in-app purchase, I believe. Well, it was when I first got it around 8 months ago, I believe. And this allows you to do the slow shutter effect within the iPhone. And that is so powerful. So nearly everything you can do within my A7 IV here, a professional camera, I can do within this little iPhone. And that is my full breakdown of my iPhone setup and settings to get the best cinematic results out of your iPhone, something you bring with you everywhere. But yeah, the iPhone 17 was literally just announced a couple of days ago, and I wouldn't mind getting my hands on that. From what I've seen, there are a couple awesome features that have been brought to the new iPhone 17, like OpenGate and a couple other things. But for now, my iPhone 16 Pro is absolutely doing the job. If you enjoyed, please show this vid some respect. If you learned something new, let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to watch another video like this, click up here and I'll see you over there.